Hi, my name is Kate.
Hi, my name is Yunpeng.
Hi, my name's Azucena, but I go by Susie.
My name's Greg.
We all work here at the Koch Institute for Integrative Cancer Research, which is an institute at MIT that brings together scientists and engineers to solve some of the most pressing problems in cancer research today. We're going to tell you a little bit about why each of us got involved in the STEM field and why we're so excited about science. But before we do that, you're going to do an activity. Write down 5 words that you associate with the word scientist and 5 words that you associate with the word engineer. Your teacher can provide more instructions on this activity. My name is Kate, and I work on tumor immunology and cancer genetics. In high school, I was very interested in science, and I was also very interested in math, and wanted to be a physician. And I never wanted to be a scientist at that age. You have this image of, in pop culture where they portray scientists as these very, socially inept, very awkward, isolated, or, sometimes unlikable characters. I wanted to be in a field where I was interacting with people, solving interesting problems, focused on disease, and also I wanted it to be something that I was going to have fun with.
Where's the Femto?
Femto's in the fridge.
I didn't like the idea of sitting alone in a room and doing experiments by myself with people who were very stiff and they didn't want to have fun. When I was 15, my high school started a program that helped girls get into research labs that did multiple sclerosis research at the Cleveland Clinic. And at first, I literally had no idea what was going on. And that's okay because you don't understand most things when you're a 15-year-old kid. It was so exciting to me. One day, the postdoc that I was working with looked at the result from this experiment that I had done, and she got really excited. And then she brings in the PI, and the PI is like, oh my God, this is so exciting. This is a new result, like you found something. I thought in that moment, I'm seeing something that nobody else has seen before. I get to put my name on that. And that to me, at that age, that was everything. I think that kids have to find something that gets them excited about it, and there's so many different ways to get excited about science. For example, when I was in high school and I was in my junior year, and then I also happened to be Friday the 13th, so I was thinking it's a bad luck day. And I started thinking to myself, I was like, but how do you know that it's a bad luck day? How could you actually prove that? Do more people die on Friday the 13th than on other days? I ended up calling the Centers for Disease Control, and I just asked them if they had the number of people that had died on every single day of the year. And they were like, yeah, we have like 50 years, like what do you want us to send you? I did not know what I was doing, but I was so excited to have those numbers. Turns out the most common day to die is January 1st. It's really interesting stuff, and there's so many different ways to get excited about science. Our whole world is built on all of these things, and so much of what you're interested in day to day. It can be something you saw on the news. It can be something that you saw in a movie. I had friends who watched Iron Man and then applied to MIT because they were like, I want to make an Iron Man suit, right? And this is the thing, they did not have great math and science grades and stuff, but they watched Iron Man, or they did some stupid project on what is the most common day of the year to die, and they got really excited about science and engineering and math. There are a lot of different people in science and a lot of different ways to do science. You don't have to be a genius to do science. You don't have to be a nerd to do science. You don't have to be a math person to do science. If you are a curious person who can just ask the question of why, that's literally the first step to opening the door to doing science. I love problem solving, whether it's a disease or it's a technology or it's some issue that we haven't been able to overcome as a society. I love looking at that problem and thinking about it and trying to figure out how could I solve that, how could I make that better. I always found myself asking, why do we do things this way? Why does this work this way? Why do we give the patient that drug? Or when someone gets cancer, why can't we help them? I would love to make a drug and watch that go through clinical trials and then go into patients and actually help people. That'd be the ultimate dream. That'd be the ultimate, life success. Right now I'm working in a cancer lab and I'm focusing on immuno-oncology, so using the immune system to fight cancer. I do research on brain cancer and on blood cancers. This building was literally built to, fight cancer. It is such a smart disease and is such a massive puzzle, and at every single turn, bested science and medicine and clinicians. So for me, I think the field is really, really exciting. If you make an impact in cancer and make something, you are literally saving people's lives. There was a 7-year-old girl and she was literally on her deathbed. But the therapy that I'm currently working on is this immune-based therapy where you're re-engineering immune cells to fight cancer inside your body. And they gave this therapy to this girl. And she's a 16-year-old girl now. I'm talking 7-year-old kids who literally were supposed to die and they're not dead because of this therapy. And I just find that so absolutely inspiring. I want people to know that I'm so happy doing what I do and I love what I do so much, and I think it's a career that a lot of people could be really happy in, and it doesn't have to be doing exactly what I do. There's a lot of other ways to do this. For women that are interested in it, you don't have to look a certain way or be a certain way or act a certain way to want to go into science, and it's not all terrible. It's actually a really wonderful field. There's a lot of great people. You can still be totally normal and have a totally normal life and do totally normal things. And there are a lot of women, and it is a really strong, tight-knit community that is really supportive. And if it's something that you're interested in, even if your grades are not great in high school, that really doesn't matter. And even if you don't feel like you can do it in high school, if you have an interest, you should pursue it. And if people tell you otherwise, you shouldn't listen to them because they don't know what they're talking about. You may think that you're not interested in a career in STEM either because you think maybe you won't fit in with the people that do it, or maybe you don't think that you're smart enough or good enough to do it, but a lot of us felt that way before we chose careers in STEM. And so now you're going to do an activity. Think about a time when you did something that either you were afraid to do or intimidated to do or maybe thought you couldn't do or someone told you that you couldn't do, but you did it anyways. And think about how that made you feel. Your teacher is going to provide you more instructions on this activity, but think about that for now.
My name is Peng. I use techniques to understand why leukemia and brain cancer cells are resistant to therapy. I grew up liking computers, assembling my own computers, and playing around with simple programs on computers. I was just fascinated by how quantitative and logical computers are. When I was a little kid, I kind of wasn't really interested in interacting with people that much. I found that it is so much easier and straightforward to have a conversation with computers through either commands or programming codes. Computers and computer science became a safe haven for me where I gained confidence in interactions and know that a fixed set of rules will guide me through the process without me having to worry about messing up things. Back in high school, I learned that this is something I could adopt as a subject and pursue further. And if you could master the language of computers, you could make an impact in people's lives, change the way people think about things. Chemistry is the first scientific topic that just simply fascinates me. The high school I went to had limited amount of laboratory hands-on experience for chemistry research. I was kind of unsatisfied by the amount of hands-on experience I had. So instead, I actually smuggled chemistry reagents into my own home, trying to build my own chemistry lab. It was a really fun experience until I caused a mini-scale explosion at my home, which caused my little chemistry lab to be shut down. I really had a lot of fun in it, and it actually was what made me pursue chemistry as my first major in college. There was this biology lab that does neuroscience research that was recruiting undergrad research students. It became clearer to me that biology is something that attracts me even more than chemistry does, because biology is where some of the most challenging questions in science lie, and it's built upon the basic physical principles of math, physics, and chemistry, where everything comes together to drive complex biological systems to work. One of the things I find fascinating about scientific research is that it is largely evidence-based. When it comes to computer science as well as physics and math, there are a fixed set of rules and patterns that you could follow. And using logical reasoning, you could always arrive at a rigorous conclusion, and you could save yourself from the illusion of things that lack evidence, and you could clear away a lot of doubts about what is true and what is false. Right now, what I'm doing is actually a combination of kind of several of my dreams when I was a teenager. My current research encompasses mathematical modeling, computer science, and experimental biological research. Especially when I work in cancer research, I know that my work will be translatable to real impact on patients' life. We can develop better therapies in an intelligent way, and we can save a lot of time and money in terms of a new drug design. And that kind of translatability on top of the satisfaction that my line of work gives me is what really made me want to stay in this track. The project I currently work on uses large-scale data sets to generate hypotheses about how cancer cells are resistant to therapy, and those hypotheses are readily testable in the lab using simpler animal models. So this generates a really cool cycle where you could play with data, generate some kind of conjecture, and you can quickly design experiments to test it. And this is what I imagined I would do ever since I was in high school, because it combines both the logical reasoning and quantitativeness of computer science and mathematical modeling together with the evidence-based research that's very characteristic of biology and chemistry. When it comes to math, it's always been somewhat challenging for me because sometimes I just couldn't do so well in certain tests. I went to my math teacher and I was a little bit intimidated when I tried to approach her, but she actually gave me a lot of patient and good advice. She told me it is okay to make mistakes. It is okay to do not so well sometimes, especially if it's something that you're not entirely comfortable with. And the key point is to ask for help, because help will always be there, especially at this stage where us teachers are here to help you go through those stages of challenges. And you should always be not afraid to ask questions. And her words are kind of like the encouragement that led me to be more adventurous when it comes to new things that I learn. One of the defining characteristics of being a good research scientist in STEM is that you really want to go ask questions, and really no stupid questions, and you should reach out to people, especially when you're trying to decide whether I want to do science or technology or not. Talk to your teachers who are actually research laboratories, write them emails, talk to family members who may know people who are in STEM. That is how you gain experience, and that is how everyone else came to where they are when it comes to research. So we know that everyone has qualities that are known or may not be known to other people, and be it with friends, family, teachers, or other people. So I want you all to take a moment and think about one or two qualities that you think may not be known to other people, and think about whether it fits into one of these following categories shown on the screen, and your teacher will instruct you through the remainder of the steps.
My name's Susie and I work on trying to understand how blood cancers, leukemias, become resistant to therapy. I was pretty much that kid who had an aptitude for science, but growing up I just considered scientists to be mostly white men. I had a really hard time seeing myself in those roles. I didn't look around and see Latina scientists or people of color in those positions. Even very many women doing the things that I thought I wanted to do. This specifically relates to medicine, which is what I was thinking about when I was in high school. But it all really started at a really young age when I would come with my mother to her doctor's appointments because she didn't speak English. So I had to be the translator. And I remember she had hurt her hand and the doctor started asking her, to move her fingers. And he narrowed down that, there was a muscle in her forearm that had been strained. And I just remember thinking, wow, this is magic, and was really captivated with the idea of understanding the human body and how it works. So back in high school, I ended up pursuing science. It just was something that I was naturally attracted to. I wasn't necessarily very good at it in the beginning. It took a lot of work to try and make sure that I was up to speed and that I was studying the right way for it. And then when I got to college, it becomes much more free-form. It's more about solving problems. Poverty can be a real barrier for a lot of people. Today I look very put together, but in high school I had problems with drugs. I hung out with the wrong crew and I got myself into a little bit of trouble. I had mentors who spent a lot of time trying to redirect me and who were successful in doing that by encouraging me and making me feel powerful by allowing me to teach and to take on leadership positions in the classroom. I was lucky enough that I had a high school teacher, Miss Bronwyn, who really encouraged me and made me feel like I could really do this, even though there was nobody like me, as far as I could tell, who was doing the things that I wanted to do. And she just really encouraged me to explore my love for science. A lot of kids think about STEM and they think about a scientist doing one specific job and maybe, at the bench or even working with mice or on a computer all the time. But the reality of the situation is that science is such a creative and diverse field. There are really a lot of opportunities to turn a STEM degree into any career that you want. There are opportunities to work in business, in academics, to even work on the art side. There's a lot of art involved in science. The thing that excites me the most about what I do is the potential to discover something that could really extend patient lives. When you're trying to do these experiments that answer the question that you're trying to ask, not everything is going to go well. And so part of the fun is, if you hit a dead end, how do I troubleshoot this to either make the experiment work or to answer the question in a really different way? There's no guidelines, no textbook that's going to tell you how to do that. And while in the beginning, you do need to memorize and understand the basic foundations of the subject, ultimately the goal should be to explore these ideas in a free-thinking way that's self-driven. I study how blood cancers become resistant to therapy, and I use mouse models to do that. We do this thing called in vivo screening, where we systematically turn off genes one by one in individual cells of a tumor. We then put those cells inside of a mouse and give therapy and ask which genes, when turned off, sensitize the tumor to therapy. The thing I enjoy the most about my work is the amount of creativity that I'm allowed and the amount of independence I'm allowed when I pursue these projects. I think also the possibility of discovering something that's really going to extend patient lives and really impact a much larger population is really exciting to me. I really enjoy seeing other people, especially like young kids, nerd out about the same things I nerd out about. I dedicate a lot of my time to try and empower populations of color and disadvantaged populations to really understand the world and to really understand their health so they can take control of that. Most of the reason that I'm here today is because someone did that for me. And I think, lifting as you climb, it's a really important guideline by which I live my life. A lot of people have this misconception that scientists work alone, and that's absolutely not true. So in my lab, people spend a lot of time working in groups. That's actually how you get the best work done. I have a ton of collaborations in the building. It's what makes science so enjoyable for me because I get to meet and work with all these brilliant, amazing, and really fun people. Let your love of science guide you. Don't really worry about what the people who are currently in the field look like or what you think they should look like, because scientists can look like literally anybody. Follow your heart and follow your interests. I think that you deserve and should give yourself the opportunity to explore the things that really excite you. And you really shouldn't think about what society thinks about your choices. As long as it makes you happy, who cares? One thing that I found really helpful when I was younger was when my teachers helped me map out what my future goals might be. To this end, we're going to be having you do an activity. It's called an identity map. Your teacher will have more information for you. I hope you have fun.
My name is Greg. My research focuses on developing oxygen sensors to make cancer therapies more effective. For me, the entrepreneurial bug started early. I was 4 or 5 years old, trying to sell rubber bracelets that I was making for a few bucks. I started shoveling snow, and I always wanted to pursue startup companies, but the real question was, okay, what was a good foundation for that coming out of high school? And for me, I found that to be engineering. Engineering was a field that would allow me to go into a whole host of different paths. In college, I started a business where I was delivering snacks to students at area colleges. And then after that, I really started to think, okay, now I really like entrepreneurship, but I want to combine this with the engineering education I'd been getting. The idea of entrepreneurship was appealing to me because I really liked the idea of kind of conceiving of an idea and taking it all the way through to distribution to people to improve their lives, make whatever they were doing easier, identifying a problem, figuring out a solution, and then implementing that solution. I really like the idea of that full spectrum and not necessarily only focusing on one part of that. And that was really what drew me to the idea of entrepreneurship. And at that point, it was really just figuring out what type of company I wanted to start, what type of products I wanted to create. Since then, my focus has really been on combining engineering and science and medicine with entrepreneurship to create products and technologies that we hope will impact human health in a positive way. In our lab, have created a number of tools that are being used to try to make human health better. And we often do that together with other people in our lab, with other labs, with hospitals. So being in the healthcare and medical space, seeing these patients has a real profound impact on what I'm doing, on the motivation for doing this. Days where, maybe an experiment didn't work and you're kind of feeling down, but you see a patient, being wheeled by and having a much worse time. So it gives you motivation to kind of redouble your efforts and say, okay, it didn't work today, but I need to figure out how to make this work because the patient that's going to be wheeled by in 2 years may have this exact same problem, and I have the chance to actually improve that patient's life and maybe give them a chance at being cured. For me, though, it's really about making sure we take the technology, those last couple miles across the finish line, taking it from the lab into the clinic and into an actual product, having a large impact on humankind and human health. That's in use in patients around the world. It's an exciting and dynamic environment. I think for me, I'm really lucky to have found something that hits on all the points I would want in a job and a career. The idea of sitting at a bench and doing research can be your future as a scientist or an engineer, but it doesn't have to be, and for many people it's not. So it's really a good foundational field, and I think that's what I liked about it. It opened up a lot of doors and is something that would allow me to go a lot of different paths over the rest of my career. It's just a dynamic environment to work in. I really like the idea that my entrepreneurial goals could align with having a large impact on humankind and human health. The idea of there being something that's insufficiently addressed today is kind of a hallmark of entrepreneurship. Right now, we are working on developing an oxygen sensor to map the oxygen in tumors. And tumors with less oxygen are more resistant to treatment. And if we can provide doctors and patients with information about how much oxygen is in a tumor, they can create a strategy to try to overcome that resistance. So this problem for me was something that I found very exciting because we have a subset of the patient population that isn't being treated as well as they could if we could provide doctors with more information. I think science and engineering are some of the most creative fields you can be in. I think you spend a couple years in undergrad really building the foundational building blocks and the tools you're going to use to create things for the rest of your life. Doing extremely well in school obviously opens up a lot of doors, but it doesn't mean doors are closed if you found math or science to be a tougher subject. I really think it's important to realize that many of the people that are in these fields, not everyone was an A+ student in high school and went necessarily to a top research university for undergrad. People should not feel that if they struggled in math and science in high school, that necessarily means that math and science and a STEM education is not for them in college and beyond. If you're struggling with something, there's probably lots of other people that are struggling. If you just tell somebody you're struggling a little bit with a field, whether it's a science class, a math class, just kind of speaking up and saying, this is something that I'm struggling with, I'd like some help. It's really about what can I understand and what can I bring to the table. The idea of innovating and creating and inventing when you're young is great. It gets your mind thinking in a really good way. But if you do have these ideas and this drive early on, I think people are surprisingly open to talking to students about their ideas, their interests. I've been amazed at how many people they say, sure, I'll give you 30 minutes, let's hop on the phone. And I think the idea that you are a high school student and that means the world of inventing and creating and entrepreneurship isn't for you is a thought of the past. One of the real big things I wish I knew at the time was, whatever opportunities I may have, try to seize those opportunities. If your school has opportunities to interact with people from industry, research universities, at hospitals, take advantage of those opportunities. If your school doesn't have that opportunity, you can almost create that on your own. You'd be amazed at how much people really want to engage with the next generation of scientists, engineers, innovators, and inventors. Creating an idea and then pursuing that idea could be a great way to spend your time while you're in high school and trying to take the next step in your life. Now that you've gotten a chance to hear about what motivates me and excites me about this interface of engineering and entrepreneurship, you're going to get a chance to explore some of the challenges that an engineering startup faces and some of the potential solutions to address those. Your teacher will have more information on this activity.
We hope you enjoyed the video, and we hope that you learned something from listening to our stories about how we each got involved in STEM research. If you want more information, feel free to email the email address provided on the screen. In addition, if you have a university nearby you, don't be afraid to email scientists or researchers there. They would love to hear from you.